Okay, I have pressed the big old button. In theory,
Live, baby.
we're alive.
Hello, internet.
Gonna get out of studio
How is your
mode.
internet today?
Internet's been a little spotty for me. Damn internets.
Shame.
Yeah.
Shame.
Hi, bro.
What's up?
How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
A little under the weather today. I took today off work because I am not feeling great. Got like a pressure behind the eyes kind of thing going on, and my throat's a little ragged. But I didn't want to.
You
skip
look
this.
terrible.
Thanks. I feel flushed. It's been hot in here, and I've been keeping my door closed, and I've been running a lot of 3D prints lately. And the 3D printer is the glass bed produces heat, and then also the little filament thing. It melts the plastic in order to lay it down and stuff. So that thing generates a lot of heat, and I've had the doors closed in here, and I've been focused on a lot of stuff with work. So yeah, this room I think was got up to 27 degrees Celsius yesterday or something like that, which is 80.6.
How long have you been in Canada now? 2016, right?
We're 2 weeks shy of being here 6 years.
Okay. How long did it take you to have you adjusted to Celsius now? Do you think in Celsius now?
No.
If I say Fahrenheit to you, do you convert?
No, I have not lost Fahrenheit. I tried to do immersion style learning coming here and just going forget it. I'm not gonna, when I look at the weather, I'm gonna look at Celsius. And I was doing some conversions here and there, okay, what exactly does that mean? But I was trying to just kind of go, okay, well, it says it's going to be 17 today. What does that mean? And then I would be out and about, and I'd be like, okay, so this is 17, and I tried to just do it that way. But no,
I really wish America would catch up. Celsius is more scientific. It's easier math. I appreciate that as a programmer. You just multiply and divide by 10. There you go. There's no what is it, 5,280 feet in a mile? Where you just roll some dice and that number.
Is that what it is? Is that 5,280?
That might be wrong. That's just off the top. That's what school implanted in my brain. Let's see. How many feet in a mile? 5,280. Why is that in my brain? See, I don't need that. The rest of the world doesn't need that. The rest of the world's like, no, we're good with Celsius.
No, that's stupid.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Game dev? Or
Sure. What have you been up to? Why don't you so as we've talked about before, it's a little easier for you to speak in specifics about what you've been up to than it is for me, because I'm working at a company and I'm not here to talk about what I've been working on, so I have to be a little vague in terms of, I can't get specific about what I'm doing. I have to speak in terms of
your opinions are your own and not that of your employer.
Correct.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, exactly.
If we had any post budget, this is where the text
exactly. So
would be. Yeah.
If you ask me what I've been doing, I have to be very vague. But let's start with you. What have you been doing the last week since we streamed last? Is there anything you want to any milestones or have any cool stuff?
I got a pretty good milestone. I'm looking at my corkboard above me, which lays out my development plan, and there's 9 phases, which is quite a bit, and I've almost cracked the first one. That's how my progress is going.
9 phases?
Yeah, 9 different milestones to hit, or big features that I need to complete. One of them is, for example, the upper right one. This is phase 3. I'm on 1 out of 9. Phase 3 is the journal, which is the meta progression, the achievement system, the tracking of what you've made or killed or been killed by, and all that stuff that you want, that I want in a game like this, which has a lot of roguelike elements, even though it plays kind of more like Animal Crossing or something. That's a ton of time is why that has its own thing, and it's important that I get it right and stuff like that. So currently I'm on phase 1 of 9, which is that I have to really nail the village. The village is a really important part in my game. So maybe I should say what the game is about. I'm calling it Cauldron for now. That name might change, but it's a game about you're a witch living in the woods near a village, and you can choose what you do. You can choose to be a good witch or a bad witch. So it's really important that I get the village right. And I had made the village before in a game called Witchy that I made for 7 Day Roguelike this year. And I have villagers, and you could say I have villages in that game. And the villagers have some complicated behavior. If you aggro them, like if you upset them by stealing a baby or by murdering someone near them, they will hunt you down. They will A-star path to you, and they will find you, and they will kill you if they have a weapon, and they'll pick up weapons if they don't have one. But all that behavior was very, we call it game jam code, where it's awful. And it's, to me, it's so interesting how not portable code is sometimes. Like, even though it was in Unity and it was in C# and all of these things, like I could use methods here and there, but most of the code was like, ugh, don't even touch that. But because I'd, gone through it before and stuff like that, it was easier to implement. But the villagers in Cauldron are much more complicated because Witchy's a roguelike. But in Cauldron, there's more game state. And so villagers need more complicated things. Like, they need to be able to remember you. They need to be able to stop being aggroed and go back to their normal lives. They have their routine. They go to bed at night, and during the day they wander around and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so the code that I'd written wasn't really prepared for that level of complexity. So one thing I implemented first of this week was, really it's a state machine, but because of my nomenclature, I'm calling it phases, but it's a similar idea anyway. But now I have the ability to say a villager's in a sleeping phase, and I can perform logic around that, right? Or I can say the villager's in a wandering phase or whatever, and I can insert phases between. And so there's like an alert phase where they're like, oh, what's up, and they can like stop and give the player a beat to respond, like, oh, I must have upset that villager, right? And then before it goes right into that, because in Witchy, the villagers all respond instantly. Like, the moment you upset them, they kill you without any, moment. Like, there's no humanity to it where they'll sit there and think and be like, should I kill this? They just instantly kill you, and it doesn't feel great. So what I had to do to implement that in Cauldron was I had to take a step back because the villagers were pretty complicated. So what I did was I implemented that phases logic in the rabbits. The rabbits are really simple. So the rabbits have phases at night. They will sleep, and during the day they will wander around, and if you get too close to them, you'll spook them and they'll try to run away from you. And that's it. Pretty simple, but it's kind of a behavior tree, sort of. Like, it's pretty complicated code. It's, it took a little bit to get there, but the phases system is what I'm able to leverage now. And with that, I have complete confidence going into the villager. And so I have the basic villager behavior. They will wander during the day, they'll go home at night, they will find a bed, and they'll sleep in it. But you can do anything you want to them and it never upsets them. So it doesn't feel right yet, right? Like, it's really important for me to bake that in next. Yeah. So that's next. I need to get the aggro. I need them to hunting you. I need them killing you, and I need them forgetting about you and all that stuff. But I have I've written the code before, and I have a system in place in my current code base to get it done. So I'm really confident walking into it. It's just going to take some time.
Is that all in the same phase, getting the villagers to behave that way? You just started with the rabbits just because it's a modular thing that you can then carry over into any other entities in the game, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's using the exact same phases system. So all the work I was doing with the rabbit, I then pretty much just copy pasted that and then remixed it for the villager. The rabbit and the chicken now will just sleep wherever they are when it's nighttime, but that doesn't feel right for a villager, so they won't do that. They will remember where they were, and they'll try to go back home, and once they get there, they'll find a bed and they'll walk up to it and they'll get in it. So I just change those phases for them, but otherwise, I was using the same system. And the village is an interesting milestone to me because it's it's more of a feeling than it is specific things. Like I know for sure I need like a family's worth of villagers, right? And like some animals, it needs to feel like a village and not just like a person hanging out in the woods near a cabin. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking I probably need a little fenced in area with some chickens and maybe a shed with some tools in it. And I have a well. I'm definitely I want kids that run around. Wooden benches, like maybe a little park. I don't know. I'm trying to find that to where I'm like, I'm satisfied enough. It's not going to be, you know, really intense. You know, there won't be like stores and stuff like that. It just needs to feel like you stumbled upon an old timey, you know, little tiny village that just plopped like a, you know, sprouted up in the woods in ye old times. You know,
you're looking to do more than just a single family though, right?
Yeah. I want it to feel like a village. Yeah, that's important too. It needs to, like, I'm thinking at least maybe 3 households. I'm thinking like what feels like a wealthy family. They got a bunch of stuff, and then like a middle, and then like a one where it's just like a little tiny hut and they got nothing. Just a, you know, you kind of get that nice spread. So you get that small, medium, large feel.
Yeah.
That's what I'm picturing.
How many are you going to have a way to accelerate time, or not in a like, but a way to go like, I just want to go basically in a hibernation for 3 years, because like, let's say you've stolen all the babies or something, or you've messed with the families, and you want to have just a big chunk of time pass so that you can like let them kind of you know, they get over their sort of macro level wariness and they can kind of settle back into normal life and start procreating again and all that kind of stuff. And do you have anything like that in there, or?
Yeah, for sure. So I gave myself a bunch of time-based debugging tools, the ability to fast forward time, the ability to set what time of day it is, and the ability to speed up time. And I've just been keeping those in the game. And so I'll probably, like, I made them for myself as just to test stuff, but I'll probably make, you know, better designed versions of those to put into the game that I'll attach to, like, they have a magic resource or something. But there will definitely be like spells where you can cast to make things like that happen that you want. Like if you want to fast forward time, like I'm pretty sure I'm going to work things like aging into the game at some point, where because I have the obvious progression. You know, right now I've got the, you know, like a grown adult, and I've got a little baby, and I have the art for a child. I just haven't worked it in yet, like a, you know, adolescent or something. And then I don't have like old people sprites, but I could work that in there. I already have a day-night cycle, and I've got time passing. You know, say day 1, day 2, day 3. So I could bake that in there. It might be out of scope though. I honestly don't. I don't know yet. But you know, I think a lot about witchcraft, right? Like I want the things in the game that you think of when you think of witchcraft, and I think time is a common one. You remember? Did you see Warlock? We're always going to talk about like 40-year-old movies.
Yeah.
Remember Warlock?
Yeah, with Julian Sands and
Exactly.
Howard E. Grant.
Yeah. So there was that
Warlock?
cool. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I should have known. But remember the curse? The protagonist, he casts like, I think it's an age curse on her, right? He ages her 40 years or something like that. She gets like gray hair, and she's like, my joints, right?
Yeah,
it's a common thing. I think like when I think of, you know, black magic and witchcraft, that, you know, time-based spells come to mind. And so I think I probably will want to work them in there, but you know, they're pretty complicated. You've got to like, I guess you just run the simulation on itself a bunch. You'd be like, instead of just tick, 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 you know, oh, hey, 2 seconds passed. You'd be like, hey, 3 years passed. Seems doable.
All right, ready for this? This was
ready.
Warlock was written by I think he pronounces his name David Twohy, Twohy. Warlock was his second movie. He also wrote The Fugitive, Waterworld, The Arrival, G.I. Jane, Pitch Black, and the other Chronicles of Riddick stuff.
Wow.
He hasn't written anything that I have heard of in a while. He's doing some TV show now or something. I don't know what. Yeah, that's interesting.
That's a really good portfolio right there. I don't remember everything he said. Arrival's awesome.
Yeah, it was The Arrival, which I think is what is
Wait,
what is which is different.
The Amy Adams one? Is that what we're talking about?
No.
Oh, okay.
The Arrival.
That one I like.
Oh,
I was thinking of just Arrival.
Yeah, right. The Arrival is a '96 movie with apparently Charlie Sheen. David Twohy directed that one as well.
Sure.
I don't know that I've ever seen that movie.
That's also an alien movie. I've seen that a few times.
Have you?
It's surprisingly watchable. Yeah, I enjoy it. I don't know. I like an alien. I like an alien movie.
Warlock. Wow, man, I haven't thought of that movie in a long time.
Yeah.
Glad to see Richard E. Grant popping back up and stuff. He's fun.
Yeah. What would you see him in?
Well, he popped up as the he was in Game of Thrones. He was in the theater troupe that Arya Stark was like, she didn't join it, but she had like a little run in with the theater troupe. And most recently he was in Loki. He played played one of the multiverse, the old classic comic book Loki outfit and stuff. Yeah, it's a pretty silly role.
Yeah, I want Bruce Campbell to start to as he becomes an older man. I want him to start to play all the old, like, go down the list: old Batman, old Superman, old, like, pick it. And cast Bruce Campbell, make him your old person that shows up and has a really great scene or 5.
You know, I still haven't fully watched the Ash versus the Evil Dead stuff. I've watched like an episode or two, and I was like, "Ooh, this is good," but then for some reason I never watched it. I think there's like 3 or 4 seasons of it or something, and
I've seen it all. It's great. Yeah. Cool. Check it out. It's I would say it's somewhere between tone wise. It's nothing like Evil Dead. It's tone wise between Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness. It's not as gory and scary as Evil Dead 2, but it's also not as cartoony and schlocky as Army of Darkness. It's somewhere between. But the people that made it got it right. They knew the source. Good. I'm happy to say it's great.
Good. The I think it's
Matt's stamp of approval there.
Cha-ching.
Yeah.
I think it was the Red Letter Media commentary. They call it like commentary track or something. It's not the whole movie. They'll do like a commentary track, and I think it's just the highlights of it or whatever. But they put them up for certain movies, and they did that for Army of Darkness, and it was a long one. It was like a 45-minute or an hour one, I think. So it was a lot. They had a lot to say.
Wow.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, sorry. I had something in my eye. Rather than sending that to the feed, I decided I've got these great buttons I can press. I am listening to you.
Anyway, it was a fun listen. And Jay, I mean, they talk about that. They talk about the differences in tone between 2 and Army of Darkness.
Oh, I should watch that.
And they bring out a lot of fun trivia that they've kind of collected from watching all the various collector's editions of those movies and stuff. And so yeah, it's a fun listen. Anyway, yeah, Warlock. So aging spells. That's how we got started talking about
That's not bad. That's not bad tangent wise.
No, and I think most segues that we have, most tangents usually devolve into something having to do with TV or movies, right? I mean, we can we're at least, I don't know if you'd call that on topic or on somehow tangentially related to games. Probably not. That's a stretch. But
it depends on what you're talking about and who you're talking to. When you talk to me, it's all about game dev. I can find a way to bring it home, no matter how far the weeds we go tangent wise. I will find a way.
Good. That's your superpower.
I have a roll of string, like I'm in a labyrinth, and I would just like, what are we talking about? Like, how do we get to baseball? No. We're gonna wind it back. String. That's how that relates to making video games, everybody. That's where I'll end up.
Right.
But yeah, good. Let's say Wednesday. I don't even know what day. It's that's a wonderful feeling as well. Not knowing or caring what day of the week it is anymore. I love it.
That would be nice.
But yeah, this has been one of those weeks, one of my favorite kinds of weeks where I'm wearing many different hats. I'm published a podcast yesterday. So that took some video editing and stuff. I've been writing a bit, working on new book things and Twitter threads like I do now as part of my content marketing strategy. I have to know what those words are now. And then I did a bunch of artwork yesterday that I shared with you, and I'm really happy with it. I love it when it's so rare, but like when I sit down and I'm like, all right, this is professional art time. I need to produce a piece of work now, and this is not personal art, meaning if I don't like it, I give up, and I'm like, hey, it was for fun. I learned something. No, this is professional art time where Valadria needs a product. Valadria is hiring me as an artist. My job today is to produce. I need a 1,000 by 1,000 square to promote my game. That's what I need from you, Matt. Go make it. And so I'm like, all right. And I sat down and I handled it like professional. I did not take no for an answer. And I just grinded it until it came out. And it's one of the rare cases where it came out better than I had initially pictured it in my head. And I'll share my doodles. They're a joke, right? They're just like, circle, triangle, square. There you go. And like, that's a witch. But it's like, I got the concept across. You know what I mean? Like the doodles did their job. And so it made the work easy for me, is because once I came down to it, it was really a matter of like, I know what I want to show. I just need to render it decently in my art style. Anyway, I love working on that kind of thing. Like, and very few other people would hire me. I mean, they do sometimes, and bless them. But very few people hire me. The art part of me, I'm always grateful when they do. You know what I mean? Because like, the programmer part of me has always been very marketable. Like, programmers just always are, right? You just go to Silicon Valley. If you can program, you trip over jobs. That's whatever, right? And that's that's great, and I appreciate that. But it's always exciting to me when the other stuff, I'm like, oh, because I have so many other skills. But most people are like, we don't care about those, Matt. Can you write code? And I'm like, yeah, I get that. Fine. But yeah, the art stuff, it's great. I had a lot of fun with it. I'll be sharing that on my stream and stuff. Like, I got to follow my own advice. I wrote this Twitter thread, what you should have for your game marketing set up before you start talking about your game. It was a landing page and a call to action and iconic visuals. And so I was like, I got 2 of those set up, but I need that third thing. I need some visuals. So it's fun. My idea of a good time.
Nice. Do you just out of my own curiosity, hearing you sounds weird to say to talk about a 1,000 by 1,000 canvas. Do you just because I tend to think of things in texture size, right? 512, 1024, 2048, etc. So when I hear sizes that don't conform to those like texture sizes, I'm always like, what? No, Engine's gonna give you errors on that or whatever. But that's not the point. That's not the point of what you're doing. Do you do your source at like double size? Do you keep like arts? Like, do you just draw it at 1,000 pixels? Do you draw it at like, or do you draw it at 2,000 and then when you're done, you squeeze it down to 1 and what you need? And do you keep your DPI at 72 or do you bump that up to print resolution or anything?
It depends on the piece. For this one, I did it actually at 3,000, but the base is 1,000. Eventually it will be a bigger piece, but I'm using Eclipse Studio Paint, and so I have the bulk of the work is in vector, and so I can blow that up as big as I want. The problem is if I do that, the raster layer takes a little bit of a hit because it uses an anti-alias effect to increase the size of it, right? But that's okay because my raster data is really simple. If I have to, sometimes what I'll do is just draw over it. So I could blow it up 4 times. I might have to adjust the vector layer a little bit. I'm not too worried about it. But for the cases, like my purpose is here, I was really like, literally I need that little rectangle or it's a rectangle that you upload on Itch. I need a banner for my own website, which just looks like a HD image. I just need, a rectangle like that. And most of the time, the biggest they ever need is 1,000 by 1,000. Usually it's more like 500 or so.
Right.
But there are like if I get this game to Steam eventually, they have some big old images for like a background splash and stuff. So down the road, I would need to worry about what you're talking about.
Yeah. Do you use the vector pencil in Clip?
I do for all my line art. 100% of my line art I always use. In fact, if I ever mess it up or forget or merge the wrong layers and I end up on a raster layer, I'm like, oh no, like it's awful, right? Because the vector tools are so great. You've got the erase entire line, you can adjust, you can the big one for me is like if I needed to blow up the size, I could do that, whatever size I wanted.
Yeah.
And then I can adjust the thickness of the line to stay at, the line thickness I wanted to be at. It's great.
And you can do that per point too, right? To basically like fake, like does it translate pressure sensitivity and stuff as you're drawing out with the vector pencil? Like does it still picks that up, and then it keeps that info per point, so you can go in later and exaggerate things or tone them down?
Yeah, I haven't tried exaggerating individual lines, but I do go in and I'll like click them, and you can drag them or delete them, or you can kind of bend them. And definitely I've had this happen sometimes where a vector, like my line will stop here. My other line will have actually you can see my thumb sticking out from the back. It'll be just enough to where I can see some pixels sticking out, and I'll erase it, and it's like it's not taking. It just won't take. So I'll go into the object tool. Oh, my thumb went away. There it is. And then I'll click that object and just drag it in like whoop. This would be so much better if I should just share my screen or something. But yeah, Clip Studio Paint is my go-to. I recently just paid. It's like $25 a year or something, and I wish it were Procreate, which I just paid $10 for one time. That'd be great, but I get so much value out of it because it's the same on desktop. I love that cohesion, and it does everything I'd ever want it to do. It's awesome.
It drives me nuts how good of a port that is, because with Photoshop's iPad port, it's crummy. Like it just sucks. Like I mean, it doesn't suck, but it's like, damn it, come on, like just put the damn do what I don't remember the name of the company. Do what Clip did. Just put Photoshop on the iPad, and just say fine. It's only going to work on the M1s or something, or do whatever you need to do. But like, just what people want is they want to use Photoshop on their iPad. They don't want to use some gimped version of Photoshop that doesn't have basic functionality. And Clip has shown the world that works just fine. So like,
yeah.
But then you could get lost in a swirling vortex of trying to understand why the hell Adobe does the things that they do.
I love that. The swirling vortex. Yeah. Hey, Hyper Blue Raspberry, welcome. We're kind of trying to find our schedule. We're leaning towards Wednesdays at 9 Pacific, but yeah, we haven't really bolted anything down yet. We're still figuring out. Yeah.
Wait, I
love it.
Wait, are they asking about that, or are they asking about your game? Are they asking about our schedule, or are they asking about
do you plan to have a day-night switch? I assumed it was asking about because you and I have just been kind of, because I haven't streamed myself in 10 years, but you and I have been kind of all over the map, right? Like last time, wasn't it Tuesday?
Last time you and I streamed, it was Thursday at 10.
But before that, it was the weekend, I remember.
Before that, we did it on a Sunday, and we tried to start at like 5 or 6 or something. It was weird.
Like we maybe haven't streamed the same day of the week twice. I don't know.
No.
We've been pretty random. We're trying to bolt it down, yeah.
Flip a coin on whether we stick with Wednesday or Thursday, but I think that probably makes sense to do either Wednesday or Thursday, 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, something like that. We'll settle on a time.
Great. So let's see. That was Cauldron and my week.
Mm-hmm.
You can only talk about so many things, but
yeah.
I am curious.
Well, I was out of work today because I'm not feeling well, but my last. So I have a different role. My whole career has been as an artist, but the last year or so I've been a game director, which is a new thing for me. So it's more about every week is kind of about getting people to kind of understand what I'm looking for, what I'm shooting for, and sort of I think we've talked about this before, coming up with the like the yes pile and the no pile, right? Like these are things that I like, these are things I don't like. Like don't do these, or that's not, or these aren't right for this game that we're making. Like no. And then what that does is you end up building essentially a playground or a field, or a fenced-in field where you can run around and play. And it's kind of like, well, what will the game be? I don't know. It's not necessarily. I don't want to be a prescriptive kind of tyrant. And also, I'm not one of these people that thinks I have all the answers anyway. So like, it's the team. The team needs to build this thing together. I see my job as kind of just maintaining the fence and making sure everybody is aware of the fence, and occasionally moving the fence out or bringing it in, or when we find something, you know what, that's actually, it does kind of work, or you know what, we tried this and it doesn't work, so we're going to throw it over the fence and just consider that like it didn't work. And also I was doing some story stuff, which led me to some thinking about about things you and I have talked about before, having to do with like, I like things that are I like stories that kind of hit the emotional beats, like Christopher Nolan movies, like don't necessarily explain exactly what's going on, but man, they're shot and acted really well, and they've got great music and stuff, and so you kind of like, you can sort of get swept away with it. I was mentioning to you, Matt, like Destiny 1 and 2 both did a great job. I feel like, I know that some people had a problem with their storytelling and were like, oh, it's too much of it is locked behind little lore notes, or not, the story's dumb or whatever. I always liked it because to me, it's just enough storytelling to make you feel cool while you're doing your, I'm a little dude running around in the world, which is what all games boil down to, is you're running around doing stuff. You're running around jumping on mushrooms. You're running around shooting people. You're running around, doing skateboard tricks. Like whatever. Just give me enough story. Not all games. Obviously I like a lot of games where the story is deeply ingrained in everything. Like the Last of Us games are some of my favorite games, but
games are just so hard to talk about because, I mean, you don't want to leave Tetris off the table. You're right. You're not always a little dude, and there isn't always a story.
That's true.
Which makes games impossible to talk about. But I get what you're saying. You talk about the vast majority of action-based or avatar-based games, right? It's very seldom like, you are a person, go, for no reason, with no context. Like that's not.
You need some context, thing. Yeah.
Usually it's like, there's a zombie apocalypse and your name's Kevin. Here we go.
Yeah. Like you never played What was the zombie game that was on Xbox 360 from Capcom?
Left 4 Dead?
No, Dead.
Resident Evil? Dead Island?
No. Dead Rising. Dead Rising was
Dead Island wasn't Capcom.
That was a game where you were like, you were a dude. I mean, it had a story, but the story was like, you're a dude trapped in a mall and you're dealing with like just that game pushed the boundaries in terms of the sheer number of zombies that it threw on the screen. And like, it was literally, you're driving around like, you're literally dealing with like hundreds of zombies at a time. It was really cool. And it also had a really unique gameplay loop in terms of like, I found myself getting upset with the game at first, and it didn't click with me because it's really hard. That game is hard. And you could go like pretty early on in the game, you could be like, oh, I need to leave the mall and go out in this courtyard, and there's these guys I got to deal with. And there are these dudes who roll out in a vehicle of some kind and start shooting weapons at you that are like, you're up until that point, you're running around doing the goofy, like, oh, I found a golf club or a bat or something, and you're like, and doing all the like cool melee stuff. And then you go out here and suddenly there's 3 guys with like guns. They're shooting at you with like Uzis and shit. And then you're like, you get wrecked. And then you start over. The the problem is I didn't realize that you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to let the game start you over, and you kind of, I don't remember what the mechanics were, but there was something about it that carried through in every playthrough, and so like you either retained some things, or it was just that you, like, every playthrough you now knew kind of the sequence of where to go when in order to get the best stuff. And it was a very unique game. And a very, Capcom does this a lot. Capcom does a lot of just kind of like, sometimes they're like, F you, player, we're gonna mess with you. We're gonna come up with some kind of weird aspect to our game that at first seems really like just stupid design, but like once you wrap your head around it, you're like, oh, this is actually pretty brilliant. I feel really drawn in now by this. So anyway.
So are you telling me there's no... Okay, so is that a feature where at certain stages they're like, oh, you're at the point in the game where you should go get murdered by the Jeep machine gun people? That's part of their flow?
No.
Or is it just a tool you can use to accomplish something for you, like reset your game state?
As I recall, the flow was just like, you just had to learn, like, okay, if I go out, if I hear that there's a survivor out there that I should go rescue, don't go out there unless you're prepared, unless you've got stuff, unless you got a gun, or unless you've come up with some clever way, an explosive, or you've gotten... And so you basically learn, like, okay, shit, I died again. Let me go. Okay, I need to go through here and get this magazine that will help me carry more stuff. And then I got to go over here, and there's a secret door, and I go in here, and then there's this like weird clown who has like mini chainsaws, and then you get those, and then you're kind of able to wade through guys, and that lets you get to this thing over here where you can get a machine gun, and then you can go out there and do, like it was like you had to kind of learn, and you did that by exploring, and it was a lot of trial and error.
Okay.
Yeah, anyway, it was a weird game, but like once it clicked in my head what the game was, what it was like, I sunk a lot of time into that game. Why was I talking? Why did I bring up why did I bring that up? That's a game where there's a dude running around. Like the story was just all this kind of weird, Japanese nonsense kind of story, like a lot of just kind of little stupid side stories of these weird characters with bizarre backstories and stuff. Like the through line was like something with the the usual zombie stuff. Oh, the military's trying to come in and kill all the civilians, and blah, 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 blah. But the story was like whatever, just enough to keep me going.
That's all I ever need.
Yeah. See ya, Hyperblue Raspberry. Thanks for stopping by.
Hey, thanks for hanging out. East Coast, yeah, it's going on 1 a.m.
Ugh. Yeah.
I just watched a cooking show. It was East Coast versus West Coast, baby. Beach Brawl, I think. Jesus. I like to put it on when I'm cooking. Yeah, I don't know. I put whatever on when I'm cooking.
Hey, have you watched The Bear yet?
No, it feels like I should. I like cooking things. Like you don't really cook much, right?
I don't cook at all. No.
Oh man, I don't know. It's part of my creative side, I guess. I have a, what it is. I think I've realized over time is you'll appreciate this as a game developer. Games take so motherfucking long to make, don't they?
Yeah. Yes,
they take forever.
Yeah.
So a plate of food though, 20 minutes. Plate of food. 45 minutes. That's, you can make anything in 45 minutes.
Yeah. Hell, you can make a couple cakes. Like you could do a lot in 45 minutes.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's part of what I like about cooking is I'll be like, this week on my game, it was just bang on it. And like, I haven't finished, like I've made great progress as I talked about earlier, but I haven't finished anything. I've just dug deeper into this hole. It's so far away from even having a first playable, much less a first release or like a stable, you know what I mean? It's so far away from something that's ready for people, but I can go hang out in the kitchen for half an hour and make like a really good plate of food. Yeah. So I think that one kind of tempers the other. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing food wise that's going to take me another 9 months to finish. Like I don't have any sourdough bread starter going or anything like that.
It's weird. You can have weeks go by and you're like, what have I done? Like, has my game advanced at all? And you're like, yeah, I worked out some systems and I kind of, I put together some reference for this or that, and blah blah blah. Like what's actually in the, like, what's in the latest build? It can take a while. It does snowball. Eventually it starts to snowball and you're like, ooh, yeah, we're seeing lots of cool progress and stuff. But yeah, there can definitely be weeks that go by where you're like, oh, come on.
Cauldron's the kind of game that there's so many systems that need to come together. Like the villager is not interesting yet and has already had a lot of work, right? But the villager needs like a sprite, and it needs some basic behavior. It needs time of day. It needs to feel more like a person, that it needs to respond to you. It needs to attack you. It needs to have a little bit of intelligence. And it also needs a reason for you to go. And like the villager needs a system of things that the villager has that you want, like a point of conflict where you might have to go, have a conflict with the villager because you need a key or something like that, right? All these systems have to come together before it's like, there you go. The villagers feel pretty good. Like the villagers don't feel good. I can't even tell you how many hours I put into working on them. And that's, it's part of the process. It's part of just showing up every day and getting the work done. And a few months or years go by, and eventually you've got a really cool video game.
Mm-hmm.
But it also is and slow moving.
What
happened?
Oh, you're back. Your mic did some weird things.
Input and output. Yeah, it looks right. I don't know what it did. Derek Yu, the Spelunky creator, calls that part of development the swamp, the middle part of development, where, how does he put it? It's like like low ROI as far as like what feels like progress, right? I've definitely noticed that recently. I'll work like 3 or 4 hours on something, and I'm like, I have a half-done actor. It'll be really cool when I finish it, but for now it's like, it's not very rewarding. It's not even finished. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
But like, the beginning part of development, you'll go from like, there's nothing to like, oh, there's a world with a map you can walk around in, like amazing, making great progress. Your synapses are firing and, you feel good. End of development, what a good time. You're connecting everything, you're all done, you're like, oh, finish, close that ticket, or push build, yeah. Oh, that's really good. But the middle part, like the vast majority of development, you're just like, I got one thing done, I only have 11,000 more.
It's like when I'm doing 2D pieces, when I'm doing stuff like movie posters or things like this, it's like they look like shit right up until they don't. You know what I mean? Like when there's some place close at the end where it crosses over, where it finally hits a tipping point, you're like, oh okay, cool, there it is. And now it's like, okay, here's the polish tasks, and kind of solidifying it. But like before that point, I'm like, I don't want anybody to see this. This just looks like complete garbage. Like, is it because it's just a bunch of stuff poured into the file and things that I know need to get made better, and things are in pieces and on different layers, and it's just like you're like, I'd be fired if somebody showed me this right now, or if I showed this to somebody.
Fire that man. Can you see? Let's see. Let's see. Game dev scene. Here, I'll try this. Does this work? Are you seeing that?
I am. Do you want me to try the matte focus scene?
Or no, you're just do this. I'll just do this for a second. Let's just see if this works. I'll just show you something real quick. So, this is a spreadsheet I was working on earlier, and I thought you'd appreciate this. So this is a cricket supposed to be, and I'll explain real quick. So this is my I call it my UI sheet. This is where I put all my user interface stuff that I use for tooling. So like when I want to lay down a light, this is my yellow light. I've got a white light, blue, whatever.
Yep.
This is an exit. This is these tool tips and stuff like that. I call these growth actors. I plant these in the world, and it'll create chickens over time and stuff like that. And then so just today I added some new sound effects. And so I already had a frog looping sound. I added a bog, a cricket, and a graveyard sound. And I had a tombstone sprite already. I had, this water sprite already. I didn't have a cricket in the game. And for some reason on my task list was like, make a cricket sprite. And I was like, yeah, I need this like super polished, good looking sprite to like, match like this frog or something. Like the rest of this looks like shippable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, I don't need that. This is only visible to me. This is a tool for me. This is not visible to the player. So I was like, screw that. I just went, bleh, and I, just as fast as I could, I just scribbled this little cricket. It might be way off, but
looks like
I
a
thought
cricket.
that was fun. I'll buy that as a cricket.
It's a rickety cricket.
Cricketish. Anyway, tangent number 14.
Yeah, you're not you're not really going into any kind of story in your game, right?
I think I do need some story. Here's what I need specifically.
Oh, your mic just weirded out again.
Why?
I don't know.
Why would you do this?
Now it's back.
Why I can't believe you've done this. I don't know what's going on. I do think my audio's been a little funky ever since what was that called? Black Hole?
Yeah.
It's been a little funky, but I'll look into it. What was I going to say? I don't remember. Train boss.
Story.
Oh, yes. So, I'm the kind of player and creator where I don't need much story, but it has occurred to me I need just enough story to plant a question.
Right.
I need people to watch the trailer for the game when I finally launch it. I need them to go, awesome, that looks really cool, I want to play it. But then I also need the trailer to ask a question or to plant a mystery. I need people who watch it to want more, and not just because I hope it looks cool and I hope that they want to play it someday and all that. No, that's not enough. It needs to have a hook shaped like this, and people are fish. It needs to go like, and what about this? Like near the end, like, oh, okay, I get it. It's a witch, and there's there's like a conflict with the villagers, and whoa, there's some black magic in there, and then like, but like at the end there needs to be something. Yeah. And full disclosure, I don't know what that is yet, right? But like, I'm doing a lot of research about marketing and how to make good trailers and blah, blah, all the stuff that doesn't involve games. I'm trying to do that stuff as well. And that's one that came up and I don't have any plan for it. So it's like on my list is like, I'm just kind of hunting. It's one of the reasons I watched Beetlejuice earlier. I'm watching some witch type movies and reading some witchcraft Wikipedia pages and stuff. And I'm just digging. I got a shovel and I'm digging from pop culture and from internet. And I'm looking for some kind of cool secret I can tie into my universe.
Yep.
To plant a mystery into my trailer when I launch it in a million years.
Mm-hmm.
What's up, Joe? Welcome, dude.
I feel
I don't know why. Go ahead.
It's only done it twice in last 50 minutes. So
third time computer. Ooh,
forget it. Take that MacBook and throw it out the window. Give it a frisbee throw out the window.
Who needs it? It's only a expensive, nice piece of hardware.
I feel like stories. It's a good way to think about it. The story needs to be enough to make you think. To just answer the question, what do I do next? Or like, you've told me to go do this. Why am I doing this? Does your story answer that question? Like, if it does, great. Like, that's enough.
Yeah, it was really helpful for me learning that recently, because story is one of those things where I'm like, people like that, huh? Okay, like, sure, maybe I should put some of that in there or something. But I'm best when I know what the specific task is. Like, the story to me is now I'm suddenly excited about the possibility of story, and I've never been before. And the reason for that is because my story has a singular purpose, which is to come in and like strengthen the pillars of the game, right? Like solidify the ideas that are there and have that kind of mystery. And also, and like the game will provide the answers to the mystery, or as we've talked about, maybe some things will remain a mystery, right? But like, the game needs to satisfy people who come to the game because the trailer planted a mystery, and then they want to know more secret, like they want to know the riddle, right?
Yeah.
And so now I'm like, yeah, I don't need much story. I need enough stories to be like, there once was a witch who wanted to XYZ. That makes sense. But there's a twist where and I don't know what that is yet, but like, there's something there that is spun on its head.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I wonder if we're a little too twist happy these days. Or these days, I mean, like the last decade or two with our storytelling. If it's kind of like we're always waiting for a twist, and if something doesn't have a twist and it's just a straightforward story, if we've become used to going like, oh, well, I was waiting for the twist and there wasn't one.
I think twist is the wrong word. Yeah, I'm not really looking for a twist.
Like a hook?
I would take one. Hook is more like, I'm not trying to make an M. Night Shyamalan. Like it's not important that there's like, oh, like the whole thing was it.
Right, in the last 10 minutes, you're like, oh shit.
I can't believe. Yeah, I don't need that. I just need something unexpected, and it doesn't have to be twisty. It just needs to be like, and it was your mother all along, or and right. You're the witch in this case, so that doesn't really work. But like, I guess that can be kind of a twist. I don't know what it is. I want to find something. I want to find a tasteful hook. How about that? And I think a lot of twists can be really effective. One of my favorite ones is The Matrix. Whoa, like that's a good one. Like, I want to find a tasteful hook though, is I guess what I'm searching for.
The Matrix?
I like that. The witch was dead the entire time.
Yeah,
the Matrix is a total hook.
Well, it has
spoilers
a
are fine
but it doesn't have a twist. I think of a twist as twist. Like
that's a total twist. Is you're in a come on.
Yeah, but I guess I think a twist is something.
If you haven't seen The Matrix, it's like a 20-year-old.
Oh my
movie.
God! If you haven't seen The Matrix,
when Neo comes up out of the pot, I would call that a twist. Am I
well,
off?
the thing is, like, I would see a twist as something that you didn't see coming. Like, they were very open about their. I see that as more like that's the hook. They were pretty open about the whole like, what is the Matrix
did you go into The Matrix knowing that already? Did you see The Matrix knowing that he was going to pop out of the pod?
Jesus, I mean, it's been so long. I don't know. I mean,
that's interesting because to me, I knew here's what I knew about The Matrix going into it. I knew it had a really cool looking movie poster, and I knew I was a kid on a Friday night, and I was looking forward to hanging out with my friends, seeing a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it was awesome, but I'd had no spoilers, right? I didn't know there was computer stuff involved. I just knew, Keanu Reeves was in it. So I think I was prepped perfectly. But like, if
it's been
so
in the trailer
they showed him popping out of the pod or something. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I think twist is too strong a word, but I need a mystery. I guess that's it. I need a mystery, and it's perfect for witches are very mysterious. Witches hide. Witches have secrets. Witches want to hide their black magic. They live in the woods in secrecy. Like I don't think it'll be hard to find some cool secrets or mysteries I can plant. I just need to find a really good one that anchors the whole thing together. That also fits really well with my game loop, which is pretty much go into the world, get better stuff, and then maybe like give some gifts to the dark demon. But it's really like very much like Animal Crossing, right? It's you get more crafts and stuff, and you can power up your house, and your house is cooler, and now you got more bells, and you can power up your museum or whatever, and plant some trees and all that.
Yeah.
But instead of you're a witch, and there's needs to be some mystery. Yeah, go. You're a witch.
Right.
Toads and oil and toil and anyway.
Yeah. Right. So it's the balancing act about you want people to know, you want people to feel connected to the game and kind of be like, okay, well, what's next? Or like, oh, I'm looking forward to beating this level and seeing what happens at the end of it or whatever. But it's like this weird balancing act, or like if you tell them too much story, you don't want to have. See, I should caveat all this because like you are always bringing up Spelunky. And every one of these streams, at some point, I'm gonna bring up Final Fantasy 14 probably at some point during every one of these streams, because Final Fantasy 14 is nothing but story. I mean, there are literally points in the game where you're like, okay, I'm gonna accept this quest, and a pop-up box will come up, and it'll be like, okay, so we're about to show you several cutscenes in succession. Make sure you set aside sufficient time to actually watch them. Or, are you ready? And you can be like, oh no. If you're like, oh, I gotta go in 10 minutes, then you better hit no, because there can be times where you're sitting there literally watching like a half hour of cutscenes.
Do they give you a notice? They're like, heads up, get ready for a 32-minute movie, or
yeah.
Hope you're not going anywhere for an hour and a half.
I'm not joking. They literally a thing will pop up and be like, this is one of these long ones. Are you ready? And you have to, and you come to know what that means. You come to, if you've got the time, you're like, if you've got the time, you're like, here we go. Cool. This is going to be sweet. And because they're great.
You're a player. We're going to slog through one of these things again.
But it's not a slog. They did this fantastic. Seriously, it's the best Final Fantasy game that there is, I think.
Whoa.
And I know that's high praise, but it's like, it is. I have played that game hundreds of hours, and I have cared about the story every step of the way. There's characters that that follow you through those hundreds of hours, and who actually change, and who, characters that die and stuff. And it's fantastic. Right there with you. It's
the first thing in my head, I'm like, 4 and 6? Are you? I mean, come on. Are you?
Well, it's huge. It's one of these things where it's like the Wheel of Time books or something, where it's just like, it's so gargantuan in scope and stuff, and you really get like, they do a Anyway, fantastic game. So like, there are definitely times where you're like, there's some side stories or whatever where you're like, I don't care as much about this guy. You're like, yeah, shut up, don't care. But when it comes to like the main cast and the people that you're interacting with all the time and stuff, you get really invested. So anyway, I'm saying that caveat because that flies in the face of what I was gonna say, which is, sometimes with a lot of games you're like, man, come on, skip the cutscene. I just want to know, I'm a little dude running around, just tell me what my next step is. Leave me alone. But I guess it's the type of game, right? If you fire up Final Fantasy and you're like, ugh, story, then it's like, why are you playing Final Fantasy? Any Final Fantasy to begin with. Right? Yeah. You're just playing the wrong game. Versus you're playing something like Destiny. For me, at least, I'm playing Destiny because I want to be a space wizard, and I want to shoot stuff and throw like giant, void balls at enemies and watch them all explode, and that
sounds pretty good.
I want to do sweet shit for a couple hours. This story, you're like, I don't know, the story is I ran around on the planet, killed a lot of things, and like gathered some resources, and I went in a dungeon and kicked everybody's ass. That's the story. Like, I don't know what the story is. Like, did the story advance? Like, I'll play Destiny for a couple hours and I'm like, did I advance the story? I'm like, no, I didn't even touch it. Like, I've got these story quests sitting there and I'm like, I don't give a shit about the story. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna get my gear. I need to go run 3 dungeons to get some gear. Then I'm gonna go do some PvP to get some gear, and then I'm gonna go play this other thing to get some gear. And you're like, story schmory, whatever, get out of here.
Yeah. But I think I saw this. Somebody was complaining about a movie critic who just like hated every movie, and they were like, it had like screenshots where it was just like, notably good movies. It was like, that's crap and this is crap, and it was like, does this person even like movies? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it too. So I posted this interview with a cool guy named Sherveen on Tuesday. I talked to him, and we were talking about how, like, especially these days when games are becoming more and more niche, like not every game's for everybody, like straight up, some Steam pages are starting to have on there like, do not buy this game if you don't like, chill gameplay, like, LGBTQ themes. Like, these are things prominent in this game. Like, don't get it if those sound good to you. Like, we don't want you to buy it and hate it and then refund it. Like, this isn't for you. Like, not everything's for you. There's so many things now there's something for everybody. And like, if you just want a first-person shooter, like go there. But that's a new thing. Like I hadn't seen that. And like this strategy from game marketing is, yeah, cast a wide net, let everybody in. Hopefully, you know, okay, you don't like this is a hyper casual game. You don't like that? That's okay. Maybe it's so much fun that you'll love it and you'll grow to like it or something. Like they usually, you know, throw a wide net and like let everybody in. I'm trying to embrace not doing that. You know, like when I'm thinking about my marketing for the game, I think one of the first things I might have at the top is X's with like, this is not for you if, because like my game's not for you if you want a bunch of animation. I'm not going to do it. It's going to be mostly paper dolls. Right. My game's not for you if you're not okay with some black magic and some dark themes about like murder.
You don't like stealing babies.
You're a creepy witch in the woods. It's like, if you've seen the movie The Witch, it's that kind of stuff. It's not for you if you want you know, a soft Animal Crossing cozy game, right? That's not for you. It's not for you if you really love 3D games. It's a 2D game, right? It's like, I want to start with some of those things. It's the game's aggressively some things. I don't know. I don't have all the answers yet. But then, you know, once you've gotten past that, I can be like, well, hey, if I haven't turned you off yet, this game is for you if you like witchcraft. This game is for you if you like simple gameplay. I'm never going to throw anything, you know, no complicated game modes at you, or no complicated controls, like hold this and press that and all this stuff. It's like just real simple. Move around, pick stuff up, put it down, use it, you're done. Stuff like that.
We're making a conscious effort with the game that I'm working on right now of it being very inclusive and casting as wide in it as possible. But we made that decision, like that was one of the core tenets that we made for the entire game, right? So they're like, and we did that with Pistol Whip too. It was like one of the pillars was like you know, mainstream appeal, like going with like cool action hero vibes and broad mainstream appeal kind of thing. So we, you know, that helped us make decisions around like, well, we're not going to depict any blood, and we're not going to have songs that have foul language in them, and we're not going to you know, we're going to maybe steer away from certain kinds of imagery or whatever. And like, you know, like knowing your audience, picking your audience out is something that you should do early on, for sure. Like, what is this game and who's it for? This should be one of the very first questions that you answer. And I think that's perfectly to put yourself to narrow your scope in that regard. I admire that, for somebody to be like, I'm going to make a game that's, what's the game? There's some game that came out just recently that's very weird. I think it just showed up on Game Pass. It was on Twitter for a couple years. It's like this weird H.R. Giger game that's all like, it's like a cross between H.R. Giger and David Cronenberg imagery. It's all like weird body horror, alien, disturbing stuff, where the entire world and all the weapons and everything are all this like messed up organic stuff. And they had to have early on just gone like, well, not everybody's gonna like this, clearly. Like, we're just gonna make a creepy ass, like, gross game, and you know, fine. Like, that's great, and embrace it. And then, like, if you know who your audience is, then you can go after them, like, you know, with all barrels. You can be like, boom, get them. Like, that's our audience, get them. And everybody else who's like, you know, about your game, you can just be like, it's not for you, so F off.
I'm for it. Yeah, I don't. I get that. I think that was a smart. You know, making a game super accessible makes a lot of sense. Most of the products, especially that I've worked on over the years, and the more like mainstream games, like at the last, you know, few companies I've worked at, their strategy very much more that they want to cast a wide net. They want games anybody pick somebody off the street. Yeah, you might want to play this, right? Good strategy when you're going for, you know, that big net, especially more casual games, more multiplayer games. You know, it's easier to get people in if the games are inoffensive and kind of just, you know, non-specific fun, I guess. And I think for an indie, makes a lot more sense. Like, almost the more niche you can get, as long as there's a, you know, and usually there is, but as long as that niche is big enough to support you, I think you have to get really, 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 really niche before there's not enough people to support you. Like there's, the world is very big, and the internet has, brought people together. You could have a very, very specific game that could have quite a large audience. Something you said was interesting. You should know who your audience is, right? I agree with that. One thing I'm noticing recently is there's, in some of the work I'm doing, there's this kind of conflict between like how you should make games and how you should, structure like a game studio and stuff, right? Versus how you should make games as an independent or just personal games on your own, right? Because like, know your audience for sure. If you're working at a company where you are, where it's like you're talking about millions of dollars on the line if you talk about the whole spread of the project, right? Like that's a serious investment. You really should know exactly what you're making and how you're going to get there and all that stuff. But I think with a lot of indie games, and this is kind of my strategy with Cauldron, is more like I'm the customer, and I don't need there aren't 100 million of me, but there's probably 100,000 of me, or maybe 1 million of me. There's plenty of people who will like my game enough to support it as long as I can go and find them, right? And what's the next thing? I'm losing my train of thought here, but it feels irresponsible sometimes to be like, oh, I don't really know who this game is for, but then like the answer is really like, oh, it's for me, and like that seems like a blind, dumb way to make your game. But it's when you realize how big the audience is and how much you have in common with a lot of other people, it's kind of more comforting, because there are other people in the world who are making games who are putting up like a persona on the wall, and they make up a person, and they're like, all right, this made up person, his name is Matt. He's 25 to 48. He lives in North America. He makes, high 5 figures or low 6 figures. He, they describe me in a lot of ways. He's creative, and, he's probably married, and maybe he's got some kids or not, and, yada, yada, yada. And the customer they're going after, like they're making a Dragonlance, or they're making a Game of Thrones, or they're making a new Mario or something, and they're describing me. And that's exactly what I'm doing, right? Because I'm not making a game specifically for me where no one's going to get the jokes because it's all in jokes and stuff like that. I'm making a game for a person like me, right? Is really what the reality is. But so it seems like a selfish person to be like, I'm making this game for myself, but it does make total business sense. I'm making a super specific kind of niche game, and I just have the confidence to know that there's enough people who will agree with me that it's cool, as long as I can find them somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where we've talked about this before. I don't think you get into game dev to be. I mean, if you get into game dev to be rich or famous or whatever, like you picked the wrong line of work, man. Like it's not like you got to be in it. In my mind, to be in it, and certainly to be in it as long as you and I have, you have to be in it because you just fucking love video games, right? I mean, like, why else would you? If you've got a set of skills that you're bringing to bear to making video games, but you're not into it, you're not really into games, and it's like go to advertising, go to a marketing firm, or go work at Weta or something like that, and you could go join a union and work on movies or something. Like, you could probably be making a lot more money.
You get hired at Weta, you might actually be in games now. Definitely go to GDC.
Yeah, that's true.
Get the E3 for free.
But I don't understand why you'd get into games and then make games that you don't yourself want to play. You know what I mean? Like
I did that for a long time. It like everybody needs to work, and everybody
Yeah.
It's hard to say what piece, like your skills as a puzzle piece. It's hard always to know where your puzzle piece is going to fit. you know. And so I always
True.
get that. Like, yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know. I guess I
Go ahead.
I don't know. I just I get more understanding as like I've seen people kind of just like, oh, stumble into jobs they didn't necessarily plan for, and like, you know, I named my company Lost Decade with my buddy Jeff because we had kind of accidentally spent 10 years doing web tech, which we actually loved, and we both got really into it. I was really into web stuff for a while. They had a blog, scriptnode.com, and like just like I am now with game dev, I was like, you know, Twitter wasn't really a thing back then, so I wasn't doing that kind of stuff, but I was like still kind of like doing similar things I am now, but it was all about web dev because I loved it. But it wasn't that I had planned that. I had just kind of been like, oh, they're hiring web developers. I know how to do that stuff. And then eventually, like 10 years later, I was like, this is not what I had planned for myself. This is just where my skills had fit in. Like my puzzle piece got onto this puzzle, and I was like, whoops, like I'm working on products I don't use. You know, I'm working at a company I don't particularly care about. Whoops. Oh, you're muted.
Whoops, sorry. It's true, and you know what? I actually, I realized that what I was saying is from a, I'm saying from a position of privilege of being able to actually be kind of like higher up the ladder and be able to have more of an influence on what it is you make. You know, like when you join a game company, like I'm very fortunate in that when I was working in the Bay Area, working at EA and Activision, I got to work on stuff that like I did have an interest in. But I did, when I first started there, I had to work. I worked on like a James Bond game, and I worked on that Godfather game, and I'm like, I don't really care about the, you know, it was kind of like, okay, cool, I'm here making a paycheck. So yeah, I guess it. I should check my privilege.
Check your privilege, bro.
But if you get, for example, if you
get on you,
if you're an indie though, like you yourself, again, I guess
badge and everything.
I guess it depends on your goals, right? You could go, you're probably in a position now where you can make the game that you want because you've given yourself enough runway and you've kind of hard to get here. You've worked to get to a point where you can make something that you want. If you were like, oh shit, my runway is running out, I need to make something that where the primary goal for the game is to generate revenue, then you'd probably be making decisions about the game that, you know, like didn't involve killing babies and things like that. You know, you'd probably be making some decisions, like, not that your game won't make money, but you'd be going like, okay, this is a priority above all others, and if anything kind of is detrimental to that, I need to come up with a different solution. And essentially it's the difference between, I get the movie in the editing room, and as it is right now, it's an R. But you know what? If we want to make more money with this movie, we need to pare it down to a PG-13. What do we do? What are the changes that we make? You know, and like, so yeah, it's like, yeah. So I don't know. I've talked myself into I've painted myself into a corner. Talked myself into a corner.
Yeah. I feel like there's I also tend to do this in my head. Like let's say I make a game where it crosses some line in my head where it's like it's got some level of gore, and I'm like, okay, well that means I'll never get it on Nintendo platforms, or that means that no one will ever review it, or like almost like it gets labeled, like tagged as you know, obscene or something, right?
Yeah.
But it's like I know that's not true. Like there are hit games and movies and everything all the time. Like Witcher 3, my wife and I are playing through that now. That is a disgusting game with like, I'm talking about like a witch. Like in my game, you're a witch and you can just go kill people, which is very common in any game. But also there's children in it and you can go steal them and, you know, take them to your witch house, and, you know, it's the same thing as The Witch, where like the fairy tales, like there are fairy tales. Like the witch with the oven wants to lure children with candy and then stick them in the oven and make a meal out of them, right? And like that's pretty gross. I know it's going to turn some people off, but like Witcher 3 has way worse. It's a gross game. There's some like, because there's cutscenes that are really nice with really good voice acting and pretty decent, you know, the 3D models, and like it looks really good, and like their stories are way worse than anything I've come up with yet. and that's a multi-platinum selling huge hit game of the year type of game. So I'm like, and every year there's like a blockbuster movie like Midsummer, huge hit movie. It's a gross game with awful murderous themes, but I don't know what it is. Just growing up in a conservative place around conservative views or something, but like in my head I'm like, certainly no company I've worked for that was making games would be okay with themes like this in their games. They'd be like, hard no on that. No. I noticed this too, like when Jeff and I were making white labeled games, we were making games like we made this one game, a puzzle prototype, and our first pass was like knights versus dragons, and there'd be like bloody sprites and there'd be like a little bit of violence happening, and some of the companies we were selling white labels to, they didn't want any blood or violence of any kind. So we changed the default theme to bugs and berries, which is inoffensive, right? And that was a money-making decision. And that's exactly the same kind of decision that a lot of the bosses I've worked for would have made, because they're like, I just can't sell this disgusting or violent or bloody or gory or otherwise obscene-ish product. But like, there's completely a mass market for it. There's awful, horrible, violent, rotten games on Steam, itch, anything in the world you can put up there. Like, I can make a black, dark, gothic, magic, awful witchcraft kind of game. I can do that. But the thing is, I'm having to like work past this mental barrier of just years of experience where people have told me like, you shouldn't make stuff like that, or like that's not mainstream, or you're having a hard time selling that, or certain publishers won't even talk to you, or whatever that is. And like, I'm having to beat down that wall and say, I don't care. And I knock the wall down and I'm saying, this is what's in my head and it's coming out now. Like, I'm making a dark game about witchcraft. That's what's going on.
Well,
give me that R rating. I don't care.
Yeah,
it was Lunchbug. Yep. That almost was Night Bug. I don't know what we would have called it. But Jeff had Blair art, his placeholder Blair art, and it was dragons and knights. It was pretty cool. That's totally what I wanted to do. That's what we would have done, but we didn't know how to make money with it.
I guess what I should have, if I could go back and revise what I was saying earlier, I would say that I hope that everyone is able to get to a point in their game dev careers where you and I are essentially both at right now, where we've been afforded the opportunities to make what we want.
Sorry, my mic messed up again.
Oh. You know what I mean? Like, making something you love is always going to produce a better end result, right? So it's and also maybe I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it could be like maybe if you're very first starting out your career and you're making something, like, and if you haven't made anything yet that's been a hit, or you're like looking to break into the industry or come up with your first kind of game that goes viral on Twitter and sells a bunch on Steam or whatever, you almost probably should go for something that actually comes from the heart, right? Something that you're like, because a big part of like selling a game and a big part of, any piece of software is a result of the team that made it, right? And so like that sort of that passion will come through in the actual game itself. And likewise, lack of passion is going to come through in terms of the game just kind of being, like, meh. Like, I know there are exceptions, but like really great stuff is made by people who like really love it. And so like that could, that could be, if you've got if you're trying to break in, like, it's like, find an idea like you're talking about with witches, that you're just something like, I really love this, and like this is something that I need to say, and I got to get this out of me. I got to get this idea on paper, as it were, and like throw those ideas out there. And because that stuff will stick, as you pointed out, there's a lot of successful. It's not like any of that stuff means that your game won't be successful. There are absolutely successes that tap into mature themes and stuff. And a lot of people are looking for that. A lot of people are looking for those kind of games over like a Kirby, over the latest Kirby game or something. They're not looking for that. People are diverse creatures with a variety of tastes, right? I'm looking for a Kirby game. I'm also looking for a Witcher game. I want Super Monkey Ball just as much as I want the next Elder Scrolls. You know what I mean? I want a cute little innocent
monkey to go, I need some bananas, just as much as I want to like stick a sword into an undead dragon's skull and throw a fireball at a tower. You know what I mean? Like that's everybody too. We all want the wide spectrum of everything. Give me everything. Not in one game, mind you, necessarily, but I'm just saying, like I don't know. It's something I'm having to get over because I feel like I'm pretty easily influenced, and I start a lot of times with the default of whatever ideas I've been fed from just living in the world, And yeah, all the jobs I've had have been like, no, we're not making, probably no. I don't know if have I been paid to make a game with blood in it, other than LDG games? I would have to think about that. I don't know that I have. But anyway, with Valadria, I need this game. Like, Cauldron needs to be a profitable game, or I'll have to go back to work in a few years, right? I don't want that. I want Cauldron and books and things like that. I want Valadria to be sustainable, right?
Sure.
And so it's all putting a lot of pressure on Cauldron, and it's like, like it needs to produce, and everything that I've been like, my entire games career has been like, you can't make money with games like that. And I'm like, that sucks. I'm gonna do it anyway. Because I see, there's also, that's the thing, is there other examples of other developers doing that and having success with that. It's just that my career has been like, for whatever reason, it's been in a different path, more accessible games, casual games. But I'm trying to zero in on what I want, and I want to make a gross. You're like a witch in the woods. You can be a bog witch if you want.
Yeah, man. What do you I'm trying to think of like other stuff we've discussed before in terms of bringing them up. I don't want to shoehorn anything in too hard, but like have you thought about what so community in games, like single player games can have community as well as multiplayer games. I tend to think of community as like it's a multiplayer thing, but that's not true. Like single player games absolutely have community as well.
Absolutely.
Have you factored that into your thinking at all with this, like, or is that like further down the line?
I'm thinking about community in that I have a Discord and newsletter, just some things to kind of connect people a little bit. The Discord is where people can come in now, although there's no game yet to play and talk about, but that is my plan, is to have dedicated place for people to chat about the game. Also, like, you can choose to have a community or not on itch, but on Steam you can't. Your community is built in, to my knowledge. Maybe I've changed that, but
what do you mean built in?
Well, I don't know if you can have a Steam store page with not have a community or a forum or a discussion board or like a place where people can post.
You mean you put something on Steam, that stuff just gets like, it's part of the page. It's like, here you go, ta-da, there's now a forum. People can post about your game. Yeah.
And because of that, I think like what I'm trying to do is limit my surface area, and the game will probably end up on Steam. I just knowing what I know about game marketing, I'd be a real weird business decision to not go on Steam. So knowing that I'm gonna have to support a community there already, I'm kind of like, I'm not gonna do anything but that, because I've been on Steam before, and it was at least a part-time job just to keep up, and it's not easy work either. It is like managing negative reviews, people being mean and unfair, and refunding your game, and you're repeating yourself a lot on forums. It's like it's unpleasant work. And it also comes with some really nice reviews and people praising your game and lots of fan art. I'm not trashing it. I'm just saying, like, I know that work is coming up. I know the mountain. I see it off in the distance behind some clouds. And so because of that, I'm like, the community will come to me once I'm ready for Steam. And so other than that, I'm not going to do anything but Discord. Multiplayer, like the game would have to do spectacularly well for me to ever consider multiplayer, because the only way I would consider it is if I could afford to hire someone else to develop it for me. Because I don't like multiplayer games. I don't like the technology. I don't like the code. I don't like debugging it. I'm not into networking. I'm into game play design. I'm into content creation. I'm into like single player things. I'm a very PvE kind of person. I want to go play this procedural levels in Spelunky. I want to create a game people can play by themselves. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's another one of those things where like that's not, you know, a lot of hit games now are multiplayer. You've got your built-in, hey, you're going there and you're telling your friends about it, you know, because hey, I want you to come play the game with me. It's like it's easier to make a successful multiplayer game, but I don't have those skills or desire baked into me, so I'm just saying hard no to that. And I'm not close the door to it. Like if the game does really well and I could afford to get that done, then that sounds great. That sounds like a fun. I'd like to play the game with other people. That sounds really fun.
I think we talked about this a little bit last time, but the whole concept of like not naming things in the game, letting the community kind of come up with what those names are, having things be named organically by the community. And then there's also a little bit of the mystery behind games like games like Dark Soul and Elden Rings and all, the Soulsborne genre of games do a lot of the game's very much a black box, like Symphony of the Night, where there's shit in there where you're just like, what does this thing do? I don't know. I've equipped it and I've run around and I'm not sure what it does. And like it's almost like by baking mysterious stuff like that into the game, or cryptic things, or things that are puzzles that almost you end up going to the things where if you can't figure it out by yourself, you go to those forums, you go to the Steam forums and you're like, hey, has anybody tried to, there's this weird eagle claw thing and I don't know what to do with it. You can equip it in literally any slot. And I've tried it in a bunch of different slots and I've run around the village and like the only clue I have is that there was a note that said, something about the clutch of the eagle and like, I don't know what to make of that. Somebody else could post, oh yeah, I tried equipping it in my weapon slot and this one NPC popped up a little, a want icon over his head that I haven't seen before, and like baking like those mysteries or whatever into the design seems like a way, like a single player way of getting, like, you're not building community directly, but you're making the game a little more mysterious, and so that you get people talking about it a little bit more, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I love that. Yeah. This is the kind of game I'm going to bake a lot of mystery in that way into it. So even at this early stage, I baked in some things where like there's some locked doors. I'm a big fan of locks before keys, and so if you just kind of start wandering around the game, you'll see a golden locked door and you'll see a shed with some really cool tools in it and something you need behind a locked door. And there's a key that you can find hidden somewhere, and there's also, you can craft something that will unlock one of the doors. And so those are not things the game tells you to right now. I feel like you could probably figure it out. I think most people could. So it's not that kind of secret where it would be like, oh, people are going to want to go online and ask about it. Like maybe somebody would, but I definitely want to bake that kind of a thing in. I love this kind of a thing where you're walking down like a hallway or something and you see like a chest and you can't get to it and you're like, what is that? How do I get that? Like some of the old classic JRPGs did that so well. Like Final Fantasy IV, I think it was the first castle you were in, had that I think I'm getting this right, but like a row of chests. You could see them, but you couldn't get to them. And it wasn't until later you got like a key or something like that. And I love that kind of thing where the area you start in feels really rich, but you can't really access any of it. That's like the whole appeal of a Metroidvania, right? Is you're like, oh, I can see up there. There's like I could get up there, and there's like a energy, and a passageway. There's like two reasons I want to get up there, but I can't yet. Mm-hmm. And that's their whole thing. Is they're like, oh, it's like a banquet of food. Like, wouldn't you like this delicious food? I don't know what this accent is, but wouldn't you like this food? you can't get to it, and the game promises that you'll be able to. You just got to go play some more, and you'll get like some jump boots or like a ladder or something cool. And you're like, yeah,
teasing.
I like that kind of thing.
Yeah, lock before key is a great rule.
Repeat after me. Lock before key.
Right.
The rhyming helps me remember.
We had talked briefly about the you were showing me your the way that we were talking about sharing tools. When your platform has them built in, it's great. Your Xbox or PlayStation, it's great that they've got like, oh, I can just capture, I can press the little share button, capture the last 30 seconds of gameplay and send it up. But
yeah,
you don't get that when you're making your own game and putting it on Steam and stuff, right? I mean, that is there something built into
some
Steam?
of that like, yeah. I'm not
got a little
avid Steam user, but definitely Steam Deck. There's a button you can press. I don't know about screenshots for sure. Video I don't know about. But like I was playing a lot of Spelunky 2 on PS4, which Joe sent me because he's the coolest. Joe's is the best. PS4 was awesome. I sent you a link, John, if on twitter.com/LDG test. I was using LDG's old test account because I had the username and password. But PS4 had this awesome share feature. You could hit a screen share button, or you could hit I forget, it's been a while, but it was like you hold down a button and it would like take a chunk of video, and then it even gave you like trimming tools, and I was like, oh hell yeah. So I just, anytime something fun would happen, which was just constantly, I was like, woohoo, and I was just like share, like playing through the whole game. I love that. And so Steam Deck has some of those features, but you're totally right. It's on my to-do list. It's just such a no-brainer just to build those features in. Like I'm using Unity. I know Unity can do it. I've actually got, just for my own debugging and marketing purposes, I hit the R key. Anytime I hit the R key, it's just hard-coded, but it dumps a screenshot. It just hard codes a screenshot with current timestamp. It just goes, well, it just takes a buffer of the camera, dumps it into a folder, and it's just for me. But I could totally bake that in as a feature. It could be a button you press or a hotkey or something, and it could do the same for the users. And I'm pretty, Steam, I'm sure, Unity, I'm sure, can also take video, right? And what a smart thing to do is just like, it's just a feature in your game. If something cool happens, you could be like, oh, and you hit the button, and just like PlayStation or Xbox and anybody else would do it. But in my own game, I could have you hit the start, brings up the menu. This is all easy for me to do. My menus are all data driven. I could easily just be like, slot it in, here's this, you can take take a screenshot, or the game could constantly be recording the last the video. It could be like, hey, you want the last 30 seconds of your video, I can tweet that for you. It's just it's a blob and a URL. Sometimes just go post that on your on your, and as long as you don't have, like, if I had to do a bunch of OAuth and stuff like that, like I've spent years slogging through like Facebook login, and I don't know what that authentication stuff is like anymore. I doubt it's a pleasant, like if I had to do that stuff, that might be out of scope for me as a solo developer. But the sharing features, like here's a screenshot, do what you want with it, I'm like, yeah, I should bake that in there.
Yeah,
of course, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right though, that Steam has a bunch of, they have a bunch of overlay stuff at this point that lets you, I'm pretty sure does the equivalent of, I think there's something you can do to bring the overlay up, and then part of that overlay's got to be like, I think you can hit screenshots, and you can tell Steam to automatically upload screenshots. It's got to do the same thing with some kind of little capture the last 15 seconds of video kind of thing too. It's got to have that stuff.
Love it. Yeah. Like I didn't know that was. I remember Xbox has a similar feature, but it was way nicer on PlayStation because it was just smoother, and it was just like, I think they had it tied to one button. And on Xbox, it was that you give me 2 steps, and I go straight to hell, right? Because it was like, oh, no problem. It was seriously like, hit the Xbox button, and then within 2 seconds, hit the share button and hold it. And I'm like, I'm playing a video game here.
Yeah,
I got time for this. But yeah, I love that kind of thing. Do you guys think about that? Like, I don't know what you can talk about, but
no.
Any in-game features, or do you just depend on the OS to give you that?
No, we don't do any. I mean, it's too early on in my other thing to really have any answers there. But like, no, Pistol Whip doesn't have any. I don't think it has any capture features. I don't know if. I don't know how you do that. I mean, surely we would have done that if either the Oculus or Steam overlays in VR had that functionality.
The OS level, last time I was on Oculus, I could take a screenshot and I could take video. So maybe you didn't bother because it was in there.
I think it's more that you have to do, like, it has the stuff in the OS where you can be like, I want to stream. I want to stream what I'm doing, and that stuff actually works really well. You can go in there and you can say, I want to stream what I'm doing, and then you set up something on your desktop to actually that receives it. You connect your PC and your Oculus and receives it and streams it. And then we do that to like share gameplay on Discord or something like that. So yeah, that stuff works well. But like, I guess what I'm more looking for is like that share button on PlayStation, where you're like, where it's not a conscious decision that you're making before you start the game, but it's more of a reactionary thing of what you're just describing with Spelunky, or like, oh, something cool just happened, let me hit the share thing, and boop, and take that, and like it'll tweet it for me automatically, like PlayStation and PS4 used to do that. I think it was what was it? I think it was PS4. Yeah, like there was a Battlefield game that came out, and I remember I would, like, when some cool stuff happened, I would hit the share thing and like tweet out the last 15, like you hook up your Twitter account and it like tweets out the last 15 seconds of gameplay or something. If I got a particularly hilarious kill or something like that, you'd be like, ooh, I want to share that. My friends at work are going to enjoy that. Worked.
Yeah, on PS4 you'd hit share, and then you'd select the kind, and if you said video, it would be since the last time you did that. So if it was the first time I did it, it would be like, here's a 50-minute video, and I'm like, oh, that maybe not. So, but it had this nice trim. You could like hit the L and R buttons. Whoop, 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 whoop.
Yep.
And man, boy, do I have a backlog of Spelunky videos. And I even went through. I organized them. I labeled them as what they are, and I have no idea. I don't know. Like, I'm making a lot of video content recently, but I don't know what in the world to do with Spelunky 2. I might just play all the videos that I created and then just like react to them and then comment on them, because it's been so long. They'd probably all surprise me. And a lot of them have really big moments or interesting times where the mechanics are really revealing how nuanced they are. My favorite example is I'm going on a Spelunky tangent. I apologize, but I had a broken arrow. The broken arrow is one of the most fascinating items in the game to me, because it's such a forgettable, useless item. But what it does is it stuns you and nothing else. If you throw it at like a bat or anything, it doesn't do anything to it. All it does is, it's the equivalent of, like, you don't know about programming.
Try me.
Joe will get this. It's the equivalent of like a touch, or if you're in Bash, sometimes what you want to do is you want to like bump a file so that it's timestamp updates. It's like, it's the lowest level interaction you can have in Spelunky is with the broken arrow. It doesn't hurt you. It just, like, let's say you're a bat and you're in the state where you're stuck on the ceiling and you're not disturbed yet, or you're a spider hanging from the ceiling. An arrow, you throw it at them, it'll kill them and pass right through them. The broken arrow will just touch them. It will just nudge them, and it won't hurt them, but it'll stop them from what they were doing. They're just like, oh, and they're awake now. The spider will fall, the bat will come after you, it'll set off arrow traps. If the arrow hits you, it just kind of pushes you. It's kind of Derek, the designer, just being like, he just walks up to you and just shoves you. And I think you drop what's in your hands, but definitely, like, I think it hit me one time. I was on a jetpack and a broken arrow just passed through me, and I just went like, oh, and it's like, in Castlevania, when you take a hit and you just kind of like fall like that. Anyway, fascinating item. Why was I rambling about the broken arrow?
I don't know. Why did you start talking about the broken arrow?
I think I just wanted to. Well, there was a reason.
Oh, because you were saying we were talking about you going back and reacting to clips that you've captured.
Oh,
and...
yeah. I was looking at this big ass folder I have, and one of them was the broken arrow, and I was like, oh yeah, I got a clip with a broken arrow. It's beautiful. Because it's so much easier if you show someone what it's happening. It's much, pictures just 1,000 words and all that.
Yeah. Well, you would also you'd need to walk me through. Like you sent me that link to that Twitter account, and I was like, the hell am I looking at? What is this?
Oh, yeah. So that's the thing too, is when you watch, so like you'll watch, and that's something I think could be interesting about the reaction clips, is you just watch this 12-second clip I recorded and you're like, okay, what was that? And I'll be okay, here's why that was interesting. Let me rewind. Watch as this, do you see this happen? Oh, that was close. You didn't even know. Like that's the kind of thing that's in there a lot.
Are there people that do that with Spelunky?
Probably. I mean, it's YouTube, right? Like, it's the internet. There's nothing. You know what's funny is so I didn't know this, but I think Joe will appreciate this. I didn't know this, but a buddy of mine I've known since junior high was like watching my Spelunky progress, my Spelunky 2 progress, right? Like I finally got to the game, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna, I can't wait. So I was going through it. I was just bulldozing through the game, and I was earning the achievements rapidly. And one of my friends was like, watch, because he was also on the PSN a lot. And he was like, man, you were like, I was looking at some of those achievements you got, and they were like 0.0001 of players have it. And he was like, are you one of the best Spelunky players in the world? and I'm like, oh my god, no. Like it's so funny, because if you like I have so much context and stuff, but like you see me getting these really hard achievements, and they are really hard and they're very impressive, and that's like, wow, I can see how you could get there, but like, oh my god, there are people, like the thing that I've done that takes me hours and hours and hours to do, like beating the game the hard way. There's people who do that like for fun, like that's their warm up. They just like joop, 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 joop. They just run through the game, and I'm sitting here like I've died 17 times. Like it's not even, that's how life is, right? No matter how good you are at something, there's always yeah. I remember when we were growing up, you remember Brett? I think he's still at Capcom. He definitely worked there for a while, but he was the best at Street Fighter. Speaking of Capcom, right? He killed us all at it, and it like wasn't even fun for him. Like the rest of us were pretty, we could compete and play, and it was usually about evened out. But Brett would come in and be like, I'm just gonna kill everybody. He was just really good, right? But then I remember he moved, and he was like, yeah, and I found this like friend group, some people, some coworkers at work or something were playing Street Fighter, and I was like, okay, yeah, let's do this. And he says he went in and was just slaughtered. Like it wasn't even fun. Like they were on a different level where they were talking about there's all this nuance, because like they were Capcom people, and they were like, they got real into it, and they were like, no dude, you're playing like a casual, like there's and they couldn't even get into a tournament, and on top of that they wouldn't place in a tournament, and there's just all these levels. It's like there's always just when there's sufficient depth and complexity in a design, there's room for like, and Spelunky 2 is one of those designs where there's like almost no ceiling for how good you could be at it. And there are people who, like, I'm very good at the game, I played it a lot, but there are people who like, I look like I'm playing with my feet to some people, you know what I'm saying?
I do know what you mean. The I feel like
another level. Like I could barely, like I get to level 9 and I'm like, I die pretty quick. And if you watch the pro people, ooh,
I would play the I used to go and play the I used to play Street Fighter at the arcade in the mall. And there was some competition there, but then once I got into college and started going to the arcade that was there by the comic shop, and the what was there? It was like it was the arcade, and then there was a laundromat, then there was the record store, the bookstore, the comic shop that were all like right next to the arcade. That's where all the Japanese players who were there at the at our campus, because we had the like sister campus over in Japan, and they'd come over and yeah, that was the same thing. I had like oh shit, like And when I made friends with those guys, because I took Japanese, they were showing me that they would hold the joystick in a different way, and they had that's where I learned that they had this whole thing about well, don't you apologize if you throw somebody, and there was there was etiquette around it, and there was stuff for techniques, and there was and also none of them played. They were we don't play Guile. Guile was considered it was
cheap.
Nah, don't play Guile. Well, just because he
it's OP.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he just. I think there was something about his. He had a couple of tags that had way too much range and stuff on them, and and people were But yeah, I know what you mean. It's it's big fish in a little pond, and then you change pond sizes until suddenly you get smacked on the head, and you're like, oh shit, okay.
Yeah. You could look at something like chess. Chess is a great example because there's almost no ceiling for how So you could beat everyone you've ever met, and you could still be just no challenge to a grandmaster, right?
Yeah.
I find those kinds of deep pools interesting. Art's kind of that way. When I'm I remember early on when I was studying art, it felt like this big too many obstacles to get over. It felt like this big climb, this mountain to climb and stuff. And then at some point you realize oh, okay, that never ends. There's no end to where you reached it and you plant your flag and you're like, cool, I did it. I learned the art. I made the art. I learned it. I'm done. No, you just game dev is similar, right? You ship products and stuff, but you never really I don't know. I've noticed every 6 months or so my code style changes. And what that means, every 6 months or so, I think I have learned enough to alter how I do the core thing I do the most of. I write tens and thousands of lines of code per project, and then the next one my dialect changes, and each and every single time throughout my entire career, each time that happens, I would say that it's better, and I would argue for why it's better. It's constantly improving. There's been no flat line where I'm there you go, that's just how I make games now. I do it this way and I always do it that way. It doesn't really exist. In certain contexts, you're just always changing and trying to improve. It's never ending.
Yeah, there's no there you go. That's the best figure drawing anybody's ever made. That's the best painting of whatever that anybody has ever made. Stop it. You have now made your best drawing.
No more art.
You can hang it up now. And it's the same with video games. Nobody has made the best video game. You could take a look at when a game like GTA God, which one was it? Was it 4 when 4 came out? I think it was when 4 came out. It was a good one. It was
I got into it with 3.
I didn't play 3 actually. I skipped 3 for some reason, and my first
I had the codes memorized on 3.
Oh yeah,
give me all weapons, remove all police stars, and restore my life. I had all that, and that's just how I play the game. I just played it as God. I was invincible, and I had everything. Fun. That was great.
I think the first one I actually spent a shitload of time on was Vice City. Because man, I just loved the setting of that one, and the music was great, and it was also, I think it was technically it was a much smaller world than 3. I think it might be their smallest world. I don't think they've come out with one that was
really.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice and compact. It was it was a reasonable size. It wasn't this whole San Andreas thing where you're like, Jesus Christ, it's the size of Australia. I don't need this much room.
There's an optimal size for things. There's definitely an upper limit where I'm Witcher 3 is a little big for me. I'm like, what? Oh, it's that big? Oh my god! It is great. If you want that much content, it's fantastic. That. You know what I love? Joe mentioned GTA 3 is the first 3D one. I love it when I find a franchise and I didn't even know that it had changed dimensions. GTA was like that, and Fallout. I had no idea it was a 2D RPG. My first encounter with a lot of these games was the third one. And Elder Scrolls was always 3D. My first was, I guess, Oblivion. But I love that when the games evolve really drastically. Like a lot of those Bethesda games are good examples of that. And like it the game kind of has a little bit of it gives it a little more lore, a little, like the history becomes a little richer somehow. You know, it's got these humble beginnings, and it's almost like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, or like whoa, like the Fallout games really came a long way. Like you know, you love to see it.
Yeah. But anyway, I mentioned GTA because I think it was for like when it came out. I said there's no such thing as like the best video game, the best. Like, what does that even mean? But like, I think it was GTA 4 when it came out. We were sitting there just because that came out on PS3 and Xbox 360, and we were just staring at it. I think that wasn't PS2. No way. No. Well, whatever it was, it came out, and like whatever I was working on at the time, I remember we looked at the GTA 4. I'm pretty sure I could be getting all this wrong, but there was the GTA games are kind of infuriating because they always push something but the tech. Like they're not necessarily they don't have a lot of finesse to them per se. Like and the story is always very, very ham-fisted, and you're just like whatever, and it always devolves down to just drive around and cause mayhem, and who gives a shit anyway. And like the stories are very dopey, and the mocap looks silly and stuff, but like we would sit there and we'd point the camera down at the ground, and we were like, look at at a road, and we're like, they got a lawn, and then they got a sidewalk, and then they got more lawn, and then they got a gutter, and then they've got a the asphalt lines, and then they've got like repairs in the asphalt, and like a manhole or something, and then they've got the other edge with a seam, and then it goes into the gutter, and then they got a curb, and then we're looking at all of this, and we're like, just look at the care that they put into just, whereas a lot of other games would just kind of they'd go house, yard goes out to the edge of the road is just it's just concrete, and like there you go, it's a road. Who gives a shit? They sat there and they were like, okay, there has to be 6 inches of this, then there's 12 inches of this, and then there's this, and then there's this, and this, and we were looking at it going like, god damn, they put a lot of care into this, and they and also just technically, how were they doing it? Like at the time, whatever I was making, we were struggling with like texture memory and stuff, and draw calls and stuff, and then you look at GTA and you're like, what the hell kind of black magic are they utilizing in order to pull this off? Like it was amazing, and also kind of infuriating from a game dev standpoint. You'd be like, why isn't this good? Holy crap.
They raised the bar for you, and they made your job harder.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel similarly about Witcher 3, because the prior game I'd played similar to that was Skyrim, which has a lot of that detail, but not as much as Witcher 3. Witcher 3 feels like you're in the woods. It's just like the dirt paths have rocks. It's all broken up. There's almost it's really hard to detect like the video gaminess of it. You know what I mean? Where you start to see the grid and the patterns. Like it's really super organic. I'm very impressed.
Yeah. Yeah, they do a great job with the lighting in the GTA games, where they focus on, they get like sunrises and sunsets, like they focus on like big lighting, like, okay, it's the sunset, so we're just gonna like shoot gold lighting everywhere, and we're gonna like, we're gonna throw some pink in the sky up at the, at the horizon and stuff, and so it ends up looking, pretty, where you're like, well, there's some really nice vistas in there, and a lot of it is coming from that day-night cycle lighting and stuff, and it's really impressive. Yeah,
it's interesting that you look for all those details. Like, of course you do. You're an environment artist, but I hadn't thought about that. Where you're like, you zero in on the floor, and you're like, you're like looking at every little like, I do that with other things, but yeah, it makes total sense. You do that with the 3D art.
Yeah, I care about, like, you can tell when a team, I love when a team puts together, or when they think about the construction of stuff, when they think about like, okay, here's a metal panel, and then there's a rod going into the metal panel. A lot of games will just go like panel, rod, burp, stick it up here, duplicate it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Who cares? But like, I love when I look in a game and I see that like it's the metal rod and it fits into a sleeve, and then that sleeve has two little flanges that kind of go out, and then on this flanges is two rivets that go into the panel, and they take into account the actual like how those things fit together and stuff, right? And that's the same thing with the road example is, and when you go out and look at a road, and actually the DICE, the guys at DICE who work on Battlefield do a great job of this, of breaking down. They just take photos and they just analyze it, and they go, you can't just, if you want a road and you want the road to feel right, you have to think about the flow of people, how do people move through this, how do vehicles move through this, where does the erosion come in, and all this other stuff, and you have to break it down. You have to be like, okay, there's tracks in the middle, and then towards the edge it gets kind of gravelly, and then there's like a little berm, and then the berm goes down into like maybe little low points and stuff. Yeah, berm, just a little, like a lump, a rise of earth, a little mound of earth.
Cool.
And all, you work in all this stuff, and then you kind of go like, all right, well, you don't put a tree. There's never going to be a tree growing at the line where the gravel hits the grass, right? A tree is always going to be set back further away from that. It's going to be on the other side of the berm, the ditch, and it's going to be over there in the rocks, and like just breaking all that stuff down is. You can tell when a game puts that care in versus just kind of like slap shit everywhere, like whatever.
Yeah, the connectors. A big thing for me will be like, let's say you have some grass, just like some flat grass. You just take a tree and go blah, and it's just like a trunk. It's just like it's like it could be a log, and it just goes and there's no like the trees naturally kind of do this shape where the roots start to change. It's more conical than cylindrical, right?
Yeah.
And the roots form this big system, and sometimes the roots come back up, several feet away from the tree, and the grass gets thicker at the base of the tree because depending what area you're in, people don't mow right up to the tree always. They need a weed eater for that. Maybe they didn't do that, or just as the grass goes up the tree, it's mossier. Just all that transitional stuff matters a lot. Like when it's there, you don't even notice it, which is good. It's what you want. When it's not there, you're like, why does this feel like an N64 game?
Yep.
As a 3D game from the early 2000s. Like, what's going on here?
Well, it's composition, right? It's all like we think about composition and drawings and paintings and 2D stuff, but in 3D environments where you can move the camera around any which way, it's hard to forget about composition. It's like, no, there's composition in the environment. If I go out in my yard, it's like things naturally kind of collect together and form little clumps of interest and things, and the ground undulates, and grass and weeds and stuff grow up against the fence, and like there's just like a bunch of those little things that you have to kind of notice and make sure you're working, or else you end up with this kind of like just CG looking thing. But anyway, yeah, the Rockstar,
totally.
It helps, I guess, when you've got a team of like friggin' 800 people making a game or whatever. Like you could have people so dedicated to every little thing like that.
I saw some graphical, like a chart of showing the sales of just the GTA games. Not even talking about Red Dead Redemption, which is a huge hit, and this has a sequel, but over like a 10-year spread. Woo! Just billions.
Yeah.
Billions of dollars pouring in GTA franchise. It's just amazing.
They make so much money when they do release a game that they can afford to take 6 or 8 years between games
the games,
whatever and pump that
they
much money
feel
into
expensive.
It. Yeah.
In a good way, right? They feel rich and luxurious and plentiful.
I wish I could have gotten into Red Dead Redemption 2. I like the first one. I beat the first one, but the second one just had this weird... It just felt too much like a sim, like to the point where like you felt like you were piloting this puppet character through the world, and like every little interaction was too finicky and stuff, and then the controls were weird and kind of felt like you were moving through sludge. And there was all these when the game first came out, there was all these things about people basically wrestling with the controls, and they'd it's just stupid shit. Like they'd run up to their horse and they would like try to get on the horse, but like they'd accidentally punch the horse or something, and then the horse would like kick them, and then the people in the town would get mad and start shooting at you, and you'd be like, what the hell? And like, you know, like just stuff would go wrong just because the controls just kind of had an inherent clumsiness to them and kind of sludginess to them, and I don't know, when I tried to play it,
right,
for the sequel, the first one didn't have
it's weird
any of that. Well, actually, except the first one.
Don't fix it, right?
The first one was actually, what was the first one called? Red Dead Revolver, and then there was Red Dead Redemption. I didn't play Revolver, I don't think, but yeah, then they did Red Dead Redemption 2, and that's the one that was very, very simmy, but it's, you know,
there was a game
beautiful.
So there's been 3 in the Red Dead world.
Yeah, Red Dead Revolver was the
that.
first one, and that was like that's an old.
No, yeah, I didn't know that.
What was that on?
Red Dead Revolver.
Red Dead Revolver.
You could easily be making that up.
That was in 2004.
You don't say.
That was on PlayStation 2 and Xbox.
I had no idea.
I don't know that the characters carried over or anything like that.
Was it the same kind of gameplay? It was like a GTA type, but Old West.
I don't even know. To tell you the truth, I don't know if it was. I think it was a third-person cowboy game.
I mean, if it's Rockstar, I don't know what else they're doing.
Based on the screenshots, yeah, it looks like it was just a third-person run-around cowboy game.
You know what's interesting is I remember I'm kind of obsessed with this this GDC talk, the early days of id Software, but people sometimes they think that John Romero's like third game maybe was Doom. And he's like, dude, that was like my 90th. 90th. And people, you know, like, just you only see the tip of the iceberg, even if you're looking sometimes.
Those dudes threw so much shit at the wall in the early days there. Like, they were just banging out games like every month.
They really were. Yeah,
it was ridiculous.
They were working on 2 at a time. There's this interesting, I'm sure you haven't heard of him because this is not in your space. There's this interesting game developer co-op, I guess, called Sock Pop Collective. Ring any bells? Probably not.
No.
So I'm gonna get the numbers wrong, but they launched something like 12 games on Steam in a year or something. It was like monthly games, and I think it went on for longer than a year. But their business models are really sound one. Not only do they have a Patreon backing them up, but all the games are for sale on Steam. So like they get paid to make games and sell those games. And somebody was crunching the numbers. I saw an article recently, and like if you look at the numbers, they're more lucrative than they're more prolific some game studios, right? Because they crank out games. Like you could look at it as there's far less risk, you know.
Yeah.
12 games launched in 1 year is less risky than 1 year game launched in 1 1 year is one way to look at it, as you distribute your risk, right?
Sock Pop makes a new game every 2 weeks. And then they release them in bundles called seasons, which is actually a really interesting way to release them.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, that's really cool. That's really smart, because yeah, your risk is like, well, whatever. Like if that one's not a hit, if people don't like it, you know, whatever. By the time we find out that people don't like it, we're already halfway through making our next one. Like, you know.
Yeah,
like who
and
cares?
Publishers, it's the exact model. Publishers just publish a ton of games, and it's almost like an investment portfolio where solidly 10% of them are the money makers. And the rest of them are kind of like loss leaders or just losses, right? But that can be their whole strategy. Like they, you know, as far as I know, their team is like 8 or something, and I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I should research this more. But what I heard is that they make the games themselves, like one person, and they actually take more like 3 or 4 months to make the game. But because there's like 8 of them, they can have that frequency where they just set it up so that they're releasing as often as they need to. Where was I going with that?
Yeah, I don't know anything about them either. I was just clicking the.
I had an amazing point. I was working towards some short.
I clicked season 10, and that's where it said that they make a new game every 2 weeks. Whether or not that's what they've done for all these packages, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, multiple of these seasons say the same thing, where they make a game every 2 weeks. I mean, and also the creative engagements on something like that. Oh man, like that's got to be some. I guess you could flip it and say like, oh my god, you could get burned out. But if they're taking, like, if they let people go, I'm gonna skip the next couple games, please, because I need to, like, I'm starting to burn out a little bit. Like, but otherwise, if you're just like, that would be so creatively engaging. You would just be like, every idea is valid. You got some dopey, we've talked before about how we keep, OneNote or Evernote files or something where they're just like blah, 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 just bullet point lists of just like pages long of just like, I'm just gonna write down every stupid idea I can think of. Having that be like every idea on there, you'd be like, slap it on the board. Slap it on the board. Did you think of it? Blam, slap it on the board. It's a valid idea. That could be really cool. That could be fun.
It would keep your scope down too, knowing you needed to ship in just a few months. I have a pretty bad habit of adjusting my scope as I see fit. And like my current game, I actually want it to have a big scope. I'm kind of trying to blow up my scope in a controlled way. But if I was on a cadence where it was like, all right, look, with breaks in between and everything, you got to launch 2 games every year. Here you go. I certainly wouldn't be making games like Cauldron, but I definitely think I'd be pretty happy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because like what they have going on there is what it sounds like, is they've got a system that works where they can pull decent salaries and crank out games themselves as part of a unit.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds pretty sweet.
Yeah.
I have plenty of game ideas, and probably most of them I could trim down or otherwise try to shape to fit into that 3-month cadence, perhaps. Hard to say. They must have really good tools, because like by the time it's hard. By the time I ship Cauldron, I'll have really good tools in Unity, but I think also by that time I'm gonna want to switch to Godot or something else. I'm so tired of switching tool. I feel like every other game I make, I'm switching tools. Makes it hard to.
So you're unhappy enough with Unity that you're already thinking about.
No, it's just that
next?
they're already. There's so many dumb decisions, and it's only getting worse. It's not trending in a good direction. It's like bad now, and it's looking to get stupider. And I'm just looking down the road, and I'm like, 2 years from now, I'm gonna be like, I don't want to do this. I just know it's coming. I'm already hearing from developers I respect who are like, oh yeah, I'm not upgrading from 2018 ever. I will never upgrade from 2018. And I'm
Really?
like, I'm on 2022 now, or sorry, 2020. And I'm like, okay, I'm locking down. I am not going to upgrade to any more versions.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, I hate to say it, right? Because like I just have so much Unity knowledge in my head now. That sucks if I'm not going to continue on it. And I like it, the tooling. I like the tooling a lot. It's genuinely really good. It's kind of the tool I've always been wanting, right? And the model works for me where I can use it all day long, and I only have to pay for it if I ever make money. That's great. I like that model. It's just, this dumb decisions add up, and I'm the kind of person who I don't really like proprietary tools anyway. Almost no other tool I use, like every other tool I use is open source, you know what I mean? From the terminal I write in, the code editor I use, everything but the OS. In my other tech stack, my web tech stack, every single piece of the puzzle is open source, from like the JavaScript interpreter all the way up to the browser and the package manager and the distribution tool. Like the tools I use, I've open sourced. It's just a big open source mess, and I love it because it's like no one can ever be like, hey, you can't use that anymore, or like, hey, that's being used for military purposes now, or we've merged with a malware company, and I'm like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right. Well, I'm starting to feel
that time, huh?
Yeah, I'm starting to feel like I should go to bed.
You're looking worse by the minute.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm declining. My health is declining.
Yeah, Yeah, it's bedtime.
We should one of these days though, or weeks or whatever, we are going to get into. I do want to break down.
We have specific things to cover.
I want to get into
We
the
should play
aliens
games
thing.
someday.
We should, but I want to get into the aliens thing. I want to talk about.
We'll have an aliens. We should put it on the calendar. Maybe next week we'll be like, okay, this is the alien show.
Is the aliens rant? Rant about aliens. Rant about just storytelling in general. We touched on it a little bit in terms of like staying vague and stuff, but I think with and we touched on it a little bit last week too, and in terms of like things that don't stick the landing.
We touch on.
If you don't stick the landing, yeah, Game of Thrones and Battlestar. If you don't stick the landing, then you know the whole thing kind of.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff's important to me. Like I have my ending in my game right now, and I think it's a decent ending. But I need to like make it more mysterious and plant some secrets and whatnot. But it's a fine line to walk. Yeah, we'll talk about that in the future.
Yeah, one of these days we'll do that.
Yeah, we'll play some games as well. Thanks for hanging out, Joe. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in, folks who tuned in.
Wednesday night. Yeah.
What'd you say?
On this Wednesday night.
Wednesday night, yeah. So don't know if we'll. I mean, we're gonna lock down a schedule. It probably is going to be either Wednesday or Thursday nights, either 9 or 10 o'clock, and we tend to usually babble at each other for what 2.5 hours.
It's about the right. Awesome. About the right cadence, yeah.
It's movie length. We talk to each other for a whole movie.
You get past the first hour of wastewater, and then you talk about something interesting for half an hour, and then you get another hour of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
Bedtime.
Okay. Yes. Thank you for tuning in, folks. And
thanks for hanging out.
Yeah. Good to see you, bro.
Have a good night.
Where's my? All right. Goodbye.